Leave a comment where you are listening in the world. Please subscribe if you enjoy our content. Enjoy! I was a really confident person who used to meet a lot of people online. I was in a group of Reddit, the local group where sometimes people would post about being bored and looking for someone to hang out. I always replied to them over the weekend, and even met a few of them. Once, I contacted a 32-year-old man, 8 years older than me, who seemed pretty friendly at first, but then asked me to meet him at his house. When I asked for the address, it was located in a remote place in the middle of the woods, so I stopped responding to him because he seemed like a threat to me. I wanted to hook up with someone, so I made a Tinder profile. I used to spend hours scrolling through the girls because I was very picky. I liked a few girls, but they were either in a different city or miles away from my location, and I wasn't desperate enough to drive all the way there to meet someone who was probably a catfish. Then one profile caught my eye, Ruth Adams. She was the most beautiful girl I have ever seen, and she was just 6 miles away from my apartment. I looked through her profile, and she didn't have any bio, so I texted her. She replied to me instantly, and was quite friendly, just a handful of pictures, and within a few messages, she was inviting me over to her place. 2 red flags right off the bat. But she swore she wasn't a catfish, so I suggested grabbing a quick pint first. That way, if a burly biker dude showed up blowing me kisses, I could make a hasty escape through the fire exit. I always went prepared, and I had already made up my mind that she was a catfish before changing into something decent and leaving to meet her. When she walked into the pub, I nearly choked on my own skepticism. Ruth looked like something out of mythology, long legs under a thigh-high skirt, a trench coat draped over her shoulders, onyx eyes that shimmered in the dim light. She moved like she owned the place, every flick of her hair sending ripples through the room as drinkers snuck glances at her in the back bar mirror. She didn't look exactly like her photos, but if anything, she was even more striking. Way out of my league. I went in for a hug, which she effortlessly redirected into a firm handshake. Her grip was cool, her thick winter gloves at odds with the roaring fireplace in the corner. A small, sensible voice in my head muttered, "What's the catch?" Surely any second now, she'd pull a scam. Empty my bank account. Maybe she already had? I patted my pockets, wallet, phone, Pokemon keychain. Still there. The red flags in my mind faded into the background. The bartender took our orders. I got a pint of Guinness. Ruth just asked for tap water, and we slipped into conversation. When I started rambling about life in the IT world, she let out a dramatic yawn. Chuckling, I asked, "All right, what do you do then?" "I'm between jobs." "Between what and what?" "Between surgeon and anything that doesn't involve bodily fluids." Huh, you'd think medical school would have covered that part. I didn't always have a problem with them. There was an incident. She shuddered, as if brushing against an old trauma. "Anyway, let's talk about your sex life." I nearly choked, spraying Guinness across the counter. Ruth, unfazed, pulled a wet wipe from her pocket, wiped down the mess, and then meticulously readjusted the placemats and ashtray until everything was perfectly aligned. The bartender side-eyed her, but kept his mouth shut. Then she started talking kinks. Bold, unfiltered, no hesitation. My heart did this stupid little flutter, and I knew I was already in too deep. She asked if I wanted another drink. I did, but I took it slow. Any more than 4 pints, and I'd be wrapped around the toilet like a shipwreck survivor clinging to driftwood. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Ruth, don't take this the wrong way, but are you real? What's the catch here? Am I waking up tomorrow minus a kidney?" She chuckled. "I'll be honest, there is a catch. But you have to promise not to make fun of me." I crossed my heart. Leaning in, she pressed her lips against my ear. "I'm a clean freak. A major clean freak. If you come back to mine tonight, you'll need to shower the second we get there." She traced a gloved finger along my collar and barely suppressed a gag. "Your clothes will need to be cleaned too. I've got a fresh pair you can borrow. And you must brush your teeth. Also, do you have an earwax remover? If not, you can use one from my emergency kit." I blinked. "You're serious?" "Deadly. I can't stand filth. I need you spotless." "Sound good." It was like a winning lottery ticket had just landed in my lap. I downed the rest of my pint, wiped the foam from my lip and grinned. "Sounds great." In the front seat of her Volvo, Ruth handed me a breath mint, probably trying to erase the lingering taste of my aunt's cottage pie. She drove west, past town, toward an ultramodern house looming at the edge of the forest. The building's sharp white angles clashed against the dark pine trees, and an imposing high-tech barrier out back looked like it was meant to keep more than just vermin at bay. The moment we stepped inside, the harsh stench of disinfectant hit me like a wall. Every inch of the place was spotless, straight lines and sterile surfaces, like something out of an IKEA catalog. You could have performed open-heart surgery in any room. Every piece of furniture was shrink-wrapped, and 2 stuffed kittens frozen mid-pounce stood guard on the landing. "Aren't they cute?" Ruth asked when she caught me staring. It was like she lived in an alternate, plastic-wrapped reality. She made me kick off my shoes and led me down the hall. In the bathroom, she watched as I stripped. Her expression was unreadable, clinical. My clothes went into a Ziploc bag, which she held at arm's length like radioactive waste. Then she rattled off strict instructions on which soap and shampoo to use. I resisted the urge to tell her I'd been washing myself for years, probably the same sarcasm that kept me single. Instead, I stepped into the shower, and when I was done, I found a neatly folded white linen shirt and jeans waiting for me. The earwax remover on the sink looked like something out of Star Trek, but I figured out the settings eventually. In the lounge, Ruth handed me a shot of something fruity and sour. We clinked glasses, and I knocked mine back. The burn hit my stomach fast. I went to sit down, but the plastic-covered couch was slipperier than a water slide. I lost my balance, hit the ground, then suddenly my head got heavy. The air thickened, like I was wading through syrup. The next moments were a blur. The floor shifted beneath me. My limbs refused to cooperate. Then blackness. When I came to, I was on my back. My legs were pinned. My stomach churned. Breathing felt impossible. I forced myself to look down. Past the end of the bed, Ruth emerged into view, a slow, satisfied smile creeping across her lips. In her hands was a roll of shrink wrap. She was winding it tighter and tighter around my body, working her way north. I tried to speak. No words came out. Shush, she cooed, swinging a leg over my midsection, straddling me. She leaned close, her breath warm in my ear. "Don't worry. I'm going to take care of you. You look so handsome like this, all lovely and spotless. I'm just making sure you stay that way. Forever." Her tongue traced the inside of my ear before she stood and crossed the room to fetch medical equipment. My brain struggled to make sense of the nightmare unfolding, but instinct screamed, "Run." I tried flexing my legs, but they barely moved. My muscles were jelly. Ruth's grip clamped down on my ankles. "Stop squirming," she snapped. "You're ruining everything." I mustered every last ounce of strength and thrashed side to side. The bed frame rocked. Then I rolled off. The floor slammed into me, hard as concrete. My mouth opened, but instead of a scream, a tidal wave of vomit erupted from my gut. Chunks of cottage pie shot in every direction, a fountain of half-digested beef mince, onions, and garlic. Ruth recoiled in horror. She stumbled, her shoes skidding through the mess. Her arms flailed, and she crashed to the ground. The germaphobe popped back up fast. She looked at her palms, then down at the wet patches streaking her pristine clothes. Her throat made a strangled sound, like a cat coughing up a fur ball. Desperate, she clawed at her emergency wet wipes, scrubbing furiously. Sensing my chance, I crawled away, leaving a snail trail of puke behind me. "Get back here," she shrieked. But she physically couldn't stop scrubbing herself long enough to chase me. I inched down the hall, my right arm still pinned against my torso. My left was free, though, and up ahead was the kitchen. Knives. I dragged myself toward a central island, yanked open a drawer, cutlery clattered to the floor. My fingers fumbled through the pile, but all I found were spoons. Footsteps pounded toward the kitchen. Finally, my hand closed around a fork. I stabbed at the shrink wrap until my other arm wriggled loose. I was like a butterfly tearing through its cocoon. Ruth burst through the doorway, a syringe glinting in her hand. She lunged. I caught her wrist at the last second. Panic surged. I needed a weapon. Anything. Then I felt it. Something thick and sticky had climbed the back of my throat. Desperate, I spat a globby, bile-soaked oyster of half-digested scrambled eggs and bacon into my palm. Before Ruth could react, I smeared it across her face. She convulsed, her body racked with dry heaves. The syringe tumbled from her grip. I seized the fallen drawer and swung it into the side of her head. She crumpled. I hit her again, and again, until her eyes rolled back. Then I crawled. In the hallway, I spotted a phone on a side table. My fingers barely functioned, but I managed to dial 911. The operator couldn't understand me, but they sent a squad car anyway. The next thing I remember is waking up to a circle of emergency responders staring down at me. At first, the police didn't believe my story. Ruth, concussed but conscious, claimed I was the aggressor. They took us both to the hospital, patched up our cuts and bruises. For a while, it seemed like I'd be the one in trouble until officers searched the woods behind her house. Beneath a tangle of bushes, they found something. A body, wrapped in plastic, partially buried, badly decomposed. It belonged to a local man who'd vanished 6 months earlier. I remembered his mother crying on TV. Post-mortem reports suggested Ruth had kept him alive for months, feeding him through a catheter and 4-drip, ensuring he never contaminated her perfect home. It was only when he finally spoiled that she got rid of him. And if I hadn't fought back, I would have been next. Ruth says she didn't do anything wrong. I hope the prosecutors figure things out soon, but I heard it could take a year before the sentencing. You know how slow the justice system is. I'm still working on getting better mentally, but I'm ready to start looking for love again. This time, though, I'll make sure not to miss any warning signs. Hello, Internet. It's me, Francesca, your friendly neighborhood single gal with a knack for attracting weirdos, awkward moments, and as of last Saturday night, men who literally disappear into thin air. Buckle up, because this isn't your standard bad date story. This is a tale so bizarre, so mortifying, and so hilariously tragic that I had to share it with the world. Why? Because if I have to live with the emotional scars of the disappearing date, then at the very least, I deserve to turn my pain into content. It all started on a drizzly Tuesday evening. I was curled up on my couch in my favorite sweatpants, eating day-old lasagna directly from the Tupperware, don't judge me, and scrolling through the latest crop of potential suitors on insert dating app here. Most of them were the usual suspects, gym selfies, guys holding fish, and one dude whose entire bio was just, "I'm 6 feet 2 inches, ask your mom about me." But then I saw him, Elliot. Elliot's profile was like a beacon of hope in a sea of red flags. He had a warm, scruffy smile, a dog named Rufus, bonus points, and a bio that managed to be funny without trying too hard. Professional dog dad. Amateur pasta chef. Looking for someone to laugh with, or at me, whichever comes first. He messaged me first, always a good sign, and his opener wasn't some tired "hey" or "you're cute." No, this man asked, "What's the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?" which led to a delightful conversation about my ill-advised cricket taco experiment at a food festival. By the end of the week, we'd moved from app banter to texting, and Elliot suggested we meet in person. "There's this little Italian spot I love," he wrote. "It's quiet, cozy, and the food is amazing. Perfect first date territory." Fast forward to Saturday night. I spent a solid hour getting ready, oscillating between excitement and mild terror. I settled on a cute but not trying too hard outfit. A flowy blouse, dark jeans, and ankle boots. Classic first date chic. The restaurant was exactly as Elliot had described. Small, intimate, and exuding that warm garlic and tomato sauce aroma that makes you want to live there forever. I arrived a few minutes early, because punctuality is my love language, and spotted Elliot immediately. He was sitting at a corner table, looking exactly like his pictures, maybe even better. Tall, brown-haired, flannel-clad, and sporting a smile that could probably sell toothpaste. As I approached, he stood up and said, "Francesca?" "Yes," I replied, already congratulating myself on agreeing to this date. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, weather talk, compliments on the restaurant choice, a brief discussion about how weird it is to meet people from the internet, and then dove into the menu. The waiter came by, and we ordered wine. Elliot suggested a bottle of red, which I agreed to because I'm not a monster. "So," he said as we clinked glasses, "are you ready for the pasta of your life?" Things were going well. Elliot was funny, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. We bonded over our mutual love of traveling. He'd been to Lisbon, I'd been to Madrid, our shared disdain for pineapple on pizza, don't at me, and our embarrassing childhood hobbies. He'd been a yo-yo enthusiast. I'd had a brief but intense magician phase. We ordered dinner. Fettuccine Alfredo for me, spaghetti carbonara for him. When the plates arrived, he declared, "This looks so good, I might cry," which earned him bonus points for being both relatable and dramatic. About halfway through the meal, just as I was telling him about the time I accidentally locked myself in a public restroom in Florence, Elliot excused himself. "Be right back," he said, smiling as he stood up. "No problem," I replied, twirling a forkful of pasta. And then, dear readers, he left, and never came back. At first, I wasn't worried. People take their time in the restroom, right? Maybe Elliot had one of those fancy smartphones, and was doing a little harmless scrolling while waiting for his turn at the sink. Perhaps he was a germaphobe and was engaging in a meticulous, borderline obsessive hand-washing ritual. No big deal. But after 10 minutes, I started to notice things. Like how the waiter kept glancing at me with a polite, but increasingly concerned expression every time he passed my table. Or how the wine in Elliot's glass remained untouched, mocking me with its stillness. Or how I had now stirred my fettuccine alfredo so much that it was more of a sad, creamy soup than a respectable pasta dish. 15 minutes in, I started to fidget. I checked my phone for texts, nothing. Then I checked my teeth in the reflection of my spoon, still nothing. I even reached for my glass of wine, taking a long sip to calm myself down. But with every passing second, the thought grew louder in my head. This is weird. This is really, really weird. By the 20-minute mark, I was officially concerned, teetering on the edge of panic. I had two competing mental images of what might be happening. Elliot had slipped on a rogue puddle of water in the restroom, knocked himself unconscious, and was currently sprawled out on the tile floor, while restaurant staff scrambled to figure out how to contact his emergency contact. Elliot had been abducted by a team of highly efficient operatives who had mistaken him for a CIA agent carrying state secrets. Was this entirely plausible? No. Did it feel less painful than imagining he'd just ditched me? Yes. 30 minutes in, my rational brain started whispering the unthinkable. What if he's not coming back? I tried to shut it down. Of course he's coming back, I told myself. He ordered carbonara. No one abandons carbonara. But deep down I knew. At the 40-minute mark, I decided to take action. I flagged down the waiter, a sweet, young guy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else than dealing with my impending breakdown. Excuse me, I said, forcing a smile that probably looked more like a grimace. My date went to the restroom a while ago, and he hasn't come back. Would you mind checking if he's okay? The waiter blinked at me, clearly caught off guard. Sure, he said, nodding quickly. I'll go take a look. As he walked away, I sat there, gripping the edge of the table like it was a life raft. The minutes stretched out endlessly. I stared at the flickering candle in the middle of the table, willing it to provide some kind of clarity, some kind of assurance that this was all just a misunderstanding and Elliot would come strolling back any second with some charming excuse like, "Sorry, I got stuck fixing the toilet." But then the waiter returned, and the look on his face told me everything I needed to know. "There's no one in the restroom," he said, his tone careful, as if he were delivering bad news to a particularly fragile customer. I blinked. "Oh," I said, my voice barely audible. "Are you sure?" "I checked everywhere," he said. "There's no one back there." I stared at him, my brain scrambling for an explanation. Maybe he stepped outside to take a phone call. The waiter hesitated, clearly trying to gauge whether I was sane. "I can check with the hostess," he said finally. "Okay. Yes. Please do." As he walked off, I felt the first wave of humiliation wash over me. I was that girl. The girl sitting alone at a table, waiting for a date who wasn't coming back. I could feel the other diners glancing at me, their pity burning into my skin like laser beams. 5 minutes later, the hostess appeared, wearing the same look of cautious sympathy as the waiter. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, her voice soft, "but there's no record of anyone matching that description being seated here tonight." I stared at her, my jaw dropping slightly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we don't have a reservation for anyone named Elliot. And no one came in with you, as far as I can tell." My brain short-circuited. "But, he was right here," I said, pointing to the empty chair across from me. "He ordered carbonara." The hostess nodded slowly, like she was trying to placate a crazy person. "I'm really sorry," she said again, "but we don't have any record of him." I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the empty seat across from me. The untouched plate of carbonara sat there too, taunting me with its creamy, bacony perfection. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to flip the table over and demand answers from the universe. But instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I paid the bill. Yes, I paid for both meals. Because apparently, my default setting in moments of emotional distress is polite martyrdom. As I walked out of the restaurant, I kept replaying the night in my head, trying to make sense of what had happened. Had Elliot bailed on me? If so, why? Things had been going so well. Or had something genuinely weird happened? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Was I on camera? Was this restaurant part of some Truman Show-esque experiment? When I got home, I texted him. "Hey, is everything okay? You kind of disappeared." No response. The next morning I tried again. "Not sure what happened last night, but I hope you're all right. Still nothing. By the end of the week, I had come to terms with the fact that Elliot was gone. Like really gone. Not just out of the restaurant, but out of my life, as if he had never existed in the first place. Dating in the 21st century is like trying to fold a fitted sheet. No matter how hard you try, it still ends up a chaotic mess. That brings us to Ross. Ross wasn't just a guy I matched with on a dating app. No, Ross was the guy. He was humorous, funny, and cute. He worked in marketing, loved dogs, and had a travel bucket list that almost perfectly matched mine. From our first conversation, it felt like we were on the same wavelength. We traded jokes, swapped stories, and bonded over our mutual love of spicy margaritas. When he suggested we meet for dinner, I was genuinely excited. I even spent extra time picking out my outfit, something I rarely do for first dates. But little did I know, this wouldn't just be a date with Ross. It would also be a date with his phone. First impressions. I arrived at the cute little Mexican restaurant Ross had chosen, and I was immediately impressed. The vibe was warm and cozy, the kind of place where you'd want to linger over tacos and tequila. I walked in, scanning the room nervously, and there he was, tall, broad shoulders, messy but on-purpose hair. He was even better looking in person, which is about as rare as a solar eclipse in the world of online dating. "Hey, Amy," he said, standing up as I approached. He had this easy, confident smile that instantly put me at ease. We sat down, ordered drinks, spicy margaritas for both of us, of course, and started chatting. He was funny, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. For the first 20 minutes, I thought, wow, this might actually be one of those dates you tell your friends about in a good way. And then it happened. The first ring. Just as I was telling Ross about my recent trip to Charleston and my ill-fated attempt to climb a tree for the perfect Instagram shot, his phone buzzed on the table. It wasn't a subtle buzz either. His phone lit up and vibrated so violently it nearly skidded into his guacamole. "Sorry," he said with a sheepish grin, glancing at the screen. "I just need to check this real quick." I waved it off, trying to be understanding. Everyone gets the occasional urgent text or call, right? He probably just needed to confirm a work detail, or tell his mom where he left the spare key. Except it wasn't just a quick check. He picked up the phone, stared at the screen for a moment, and then answered it. "Hey, yeah, what's up?" he said, holding up a finger as if to say, 1 second. I smiled politely and sipped my margarita, pretending not to notice that he was now fully immersed in a conversation about the Q4 numbers and brand synergy. After a few minutes, he hung up and set his phone back on the table. "Sorry about that," he said, flashing me an apologetic smile. "Work stuff? It's been a crazy week." "No problem," I said, brushing it off. After all, it was just one call. What's the harm in that? As the night stretched on, it became painfully clear that Ross's phone wasn't just an occasional distraction. It was practically his plus one. The buzzes, dings, and vibrations started coming with increasing frequency, like an avalanche of interruptions that I couldn't escape. Every time we started to settle into a good conversation, his phone would light up, cutting me off mid-sentence. By the third or fourth call, I gave up trying to finish my stories. What was the point? I wasn't competing with another person. I was competing with every person in his contacts list. It wasn't just the frequency of the interruptions that got to me. It was Ross's complete lack of awareness. He didn't seem the least bit embarrassed as he kept glancing at his phone and muttering, "Sorry, work stuff," or "This'll just take a second." And most of the time, it wasn't just a second. It was 2 or 3 minutes of him being fully immersed in his phone while I sat there, staring at my enchiladas and pretending the tortilla chips were fascinating conversation partners. At one point, I tried to salvage the situation by joking about it. "Wow, your phone must be the most important part of your team," I said, forcing a laugh. Ross chuckled, completely missing the edge in my voice. "Yeah, it kind of is," he replied. "I mean, I'm basically running everything from my phone these days. It's like having an office in my pocket." An office in his pocket. Great. I wasn't on a date with Ross. I was on a date with his mobile headquarters. The breaking point. By the time our entrees were cleared, I had officially reached my limit. I could feel my frustration bubbling just under the surface, but I kept trying to convince myself to be patient. Maybe he really was having an unusually hectic day. Maybe this wasn't normal for him. Maybe, just maybe, the next call would be the last. Spoiler, it wasn't. The final straw came during dessert. We'd ordered churros with chocolate sauce, a dessert that should have been the saving grace of the evening. I thought, surely, even Ross can put his phone down long enough to enjoy a plate of warm, sugary perfection. I was wrong. Just as the churros arrived, his phone buzzed again. He didn't even hesitate this time. Without so much as an "excuse me," he grabbed his phone, stood up, and walked away muttering, "I really have to take this." I watched him disappear toward the bar area, churro in hand, and that was it. I was done. I sat there for a moment, staring at the empty seat across from me. The plate of churros sat untouched, the chocolate sauce glistening under the soft restaurant lighting. It was almost poetic. If this date were a movie, this would be the scene where the heroine realizes she deserves better. So I did what any self-respecting woman would do. I picked up a churro, dunked it in the chocolate sauce, and ate it by myself. And honestly, it was the best part of the night. The walkout. When Ross finally came back, I was already halfway through my second churro. He slid into the booth, looking apologetic but not apologetic enough. "Sorry about that," he said, for what felt like the 100th time. "It's been such a crazy day. I swear this never happens." I smiled at him, but it wasn't the kind of smile that said, "No problem." It was the kind of smile that said, "You're kidding yourself if you think I'm buying that." "Don't worry about it," I said, setting down my churro. "I've already asked for the check." His face fell slightly. "Oh really? I thought we could hang out a little longer." "I think we've spent enough time together tonight," I replied, keeping my tone light. What I didn't say but wanted to was "you and your phone, that is." Ross looked genuinely surprised for a moment, as if it hadn't occurred to him that his constant interruptions might have ruined the date. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I mean, I can put my phone on silent now. Things should be calming down." I almost laughed. Now he wanted to put his phone on silent? After I'd spent the entire evening watching him juggle calls and texts like he was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company? "No, thank you. I'm sure," I said firmly. "But thanks for dinner." I online date quite a bit, for I don't have the time or desire to go to a pub to meet women, and also it is a great tool for weeding out the crazies. One of my worst experiences was a few years ago, and really it isn't all that bad, however you may enjoy my tale. We met on Match.com, and hit it off in email pretty well with a few small warning signs that at the time seemed like general inquisitiveness. Signs like, "What is your job? Does that pay well?" In addition, her constant drive for acceptance, compliments, status, and her devout materialism. Being less cynical then than I am now, we set up a date and agree on a moderately fancy place in downtown Seattle. We set our date for 7, and I make reservations. When I arrive 5 minutes early, she is already at the table and has 3 empty martini glasses before her and nursing her 4th. Her photos were not all that out of date and represented her, perhaps 10 pounds lighter, but they definitely were not up to date. She dressed to impress, but in my mind's eye, I recall something not being right about it all. Through the date, she kept trying to impress me about things she owned, places she had been, and name-dropping famous people she claimed to have known. Her continued emphasis on equating her worth to material things, and her continued inquiries about my worth, such as "Do you rent?" with a sneer, or "Do you own?" were rapidly rising from warning to alarming. When it came time to order, she chose the most expensive thing on the menu, surf and turf with lobster, and ordered not 1, but 2 more Bombay Sapphire martinis, which she plowed through during the meal, while only touching 1 or 2 bites of her entire meal. I kept my end chit-chat small, and enjoyed my meal and paired wine, and let her continue her self-aggrandizement. For dessert, she ordered some $50 chocolate champagne truffle mousse and 2 more cocktails. I had coffee. I was beginning to grow concerned not just for my wallet, but also that she might actually be a pretty hardcore alcoholic. She had 2 bites of her dessert through the hour we talked and sent it off, like her meal, not requesting a doggy bag. As she siphoned off those 2 drinks, bringing her known total to 8 in 2.5 hours, I realized that there was something absolutely wrong with this person at a fundamental level, and getting any more involved with her would probably be a very, very bad idea. When the waiter appeared after the dessert, I said to him, "We will take the checks, please," with an emphasis on the S. On cue, she excused herself to the ladies' room. The waiter got my subtlety and promptly returned with 2 bill books and placed one on her setting, and I gave him my card. She remained in the bathroom until the waiter returned with my card and the receipt. As she came to the table complaining loudly about the bathroom, I bid her good evening and told her that I really wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship with her, but that I wished her the best of luck, and turned to walk to the door. About the time I got to the door, I heard her scream, "$400. I am not paying this," and I walked out. I never heard from her again, and I hope she got the help that she needs. Also, I would like to add that since this date I moved from the Pacific Northwest to a suburb of Stockholm, Sweden. Where here in Sweden, at least on the first date, women always pay for themselves because regardless of gender, equality is equality. I kinda like this, and although I absolutely do not mind treating a date, I think that it sets an obligation-free atmosphere for a date that allows us to get to know one another without the specter of one person being beholden to another over a meal. Matched with a dude on Tinder. First picture was pretty good, had clear skin and nice arms. Next two pictures weren't that hot, but I try to give people a chance. The first line of my Tinder bio is, "You thought I was a cute girl, but it was me, DIO." I mentally give PPL extra points if they're JoJo fans. We started our convo about JoJo and ended up chatting a bit. Maybe a week or so later, I met him at his apartment on campus, presumably to watch JoJo together. I'm a sophomore, and he's a senior. He opens the door. The most intense acne I've ever seen. Off-putting, but whatever. We sit in the common area, and we drink some tea and chat a bit more. He keeps acting like he's so old BC he's a senior, even though it's only a 2-year difference, like he's wise and mature, or whatever shit. One of his apartment mates' doors is open, and from within I can hear another guy chuckling every so often. I get kinda ticked off by the chuckling and say, "Hey, if you think we're so funny, you should come out here and join us." Tinder date says don't mind him, that's just George. George? Yeah, George Smith, not actual name. George is my big for a cultural organization on campus. Big Little Systems set littles up with a big to guide them, kinda like an older sibling. I was pretty embarrassed, but George had mentioned before that he still needed to give me my birthday gift, so I poked my head into his room to say hi. Turns out George was actually looking at his computer and had headphones on, so did not know that I was over, and I just extra embarrassed myself for no reason. He's surprised to see me, but he gives me my gift, and then he asks the date how we know each other. The date replies that we're friends. This was probably the most mortified I'd ever felt in my life. George texted me later and guessed that I matched with his roommate on Tinder. Anyway, the shit show doesn't end there. We go to his room. The guy doesn't want to watch JoJo. I don't really want to hook up, but I'm a total pushover. Was like whatever, this could be fun, but I wasn't really feeling it. He kept trying to tell me to relax, that he knew what he was doing since he was older and experienced or whatever, not like I was a virgin either. He gave me some oral, and I reciprocated, trying to get him hard. He couldn't get hard at all, and apologized saying that he found me attractive or whatever. Then he said SMTH like, "I'll probably watch too much hentai and need a girl with bigger boobs to arouse me." Eventually we give up since he can't get it up, and I say GG. He replies, "Yeah, that's the cup size you need to be to get me hard." This one time a couple years ago I got severely catfished. Hardcore. Her Tinder pictures were not even pictures of her at all. If they were, they had to have been professionally edited with a Photoshop level program or something. Anyways, I matched with someone on Tinder who was really cute in their pictures. I wouldn't say they were outright sexy, but seemed pretty cute nonetheless. When we matched, it didn't long for the conversation to turn into her saying, "You should come watch movies with me," smiley face. I agreed, got the address, etc. and left. It was about a 15-minute drive. Once I arrived to the apartment complex, I messaged her that I arrived. She said to come through the front door of the complex. When I approached the door, some lady opened the door for me. A very large and obese woman who looked like she hadn't showered in days and was wearing pajama clothes at 4 p.m. in the afternoon. When she opened the door for me, I said, "Oh, thanks." And I just stood there, pulled out my phone and was about to text my Tinder date. The lady, as I'm pulling out my phone, says, "So how was the drive?" And I was like, not bad. Why is this lady trying to make conversation with me? And she said, "That's good. I figured it'd be easy for you to find the place." And I'm still kind of in denial and thinking, oh, maybe this is her friend or something just getting the door for me. She eventually says, "You ready to head upstairs?" And I'm like, yeah. Still hoping this was just her friend or something. We get into the apartment, which was littered with empty pizza boxes, empty 2-liter Coke bottles scattered everywhere, and dirty laundry everywhere. I'm starting to realize my mistake. Nobody else was in this apartment. This humongous lady was the Tinder date. I finally came to the conclusion that I have in fact been hardcore catfished. Being the nice guy I was at the time, I didn't want to be rude and just suddenly leave. So I decided to stick around for a few minutes. After about 10 minutes she said, "You want to go lay down?" Smiley face. And I was like, No, it's okay, I'm not tired. She responds with, well, we can do more than just lay down, winky face. And I was like, yeah, I know, I haven't eaten lunch yet today and I should probably go do that, but this was nice chatting. And I left after that. I felt bad about it. I don't take pleasure in ditching someone so fast, but I was under the impression that I was meeting someone entirely different. I'm 35. I have a solid office job, a nice home, and great friends. I work out sometimes. I also make a lot of excuses about why I can't work out today, but I definitely will tomorrow. I'm normal. Average. Not fishing for compliments, just stating facts. But for the life of me, I cannot keep a guy around. I didn't even know how to start meeting good guys until a few years ago when dating apps exploded onto the scene. Quick history lesson, in case this is being heard in the distant future, or the past, because honestly, who knows anymore in the mid-2010s, online dating became completely normal. Whatever you were looking for, casual date, serious relationship, one-night stand, there was an app for that. Most of the time, it was fine. Sometimes you'd meet someone looking for more or less than you, but usually it was just fine. Then, of course, there were the liars. And the lunatics. I dealt with so many 5'6" guys who swore they were over 6 feet. So many old high school pictures where the hair was thick, the jawline was strong, and the reality check was overdue. Look, I don't care if you're bald or short, just don't act like I won't notice when we meet in person. Now, to set expectations, I'm a normal-looking woman. Not a head-turner, not a horror show. Like most women, I wish I was taller, thinner, and curvier in all the right places. But I also libido eat and hate to work out, so really I know what I signed up for. I even had friends go over my dating profile, just to make sure I was presenting myself honestly. I didn't want to be a catfish. I wanted someone who knew exactly what they were getting. An average woman with an appetite for life who really didn't want to be alone anymore. And yet, I kept meeting lunatics. There were the toe guys. So many of them. One wanted to put my toes in his ears. Another asked if I could record myself snoring. A few wanted to hook up in the bathroom, and one, not kidding, wanted to do it on the bar itself. I said no to all of those things. I'm not here to kink shame, but that is a lot for a first date with a stranger. And while the occasional weird experience makes for a funny story, too many start to weigh you down. Not that every date was a disaster. There were a few bright spots. Take Sam. Sweet guy. Took me bowling, way more fun than I expected. Made me laugh, was ridiculously cute. We hit it off right away. I took him home, had my way with him, and for a moment, it felt like maybe this dating app thing could work. And then after a week, he vanished. Enter Bill. Rough around the edges, in a fun way. Took me to a rodeo bar. We got drunk and tried the mechanical bull. I lasted all of 3 seconds before it launched me across the room. Bill did way better until he didn't. He wiped out so hard he fractured his arm. But did that stop the night? No, sir. We still went back to my place. And then, just like Sam, a few weeks later, poof. Gone. These were 2 of my success stories. But let's be real. You're not here for the good ones. You want to hear about the worst one. Oh, don't worry. I've got a story for you. John. John was your average liar and lunatic. His profile said he had an explosive personality. His photo said he had hair, a beard, muscles. All lies. We met at some generic restaurant. He ordered some forgettable meal, drank table water, and spent the entire date resembling a blank Lego minifigure with a few stray hairs on top. No personality, no conversation, just a void in human form. He answered every question with one word. He didn't ask me anything. By the time he walked me to my car, I was already halfway inside, mumbling a quick bye as I sped off. That was supposed to be it. I went home, drank half a bottle of wine, passed out in bed with my vibrator. Then hours later, I woke up to the sound of pans clanging in my kitchen. My body knew something was wrong before my brain caught up. My skin prickled. The house was dark, except for the faint glow from the kitchen. And the smell. Was that bacon? I crept downstairs. My kitchen is small, an island in the middle, cabinets underneath, stove and fridge on the far side. And there, standing in front of the stove, wearing nothing but my apron, was John. Cooking bacon. I could only see his upper half, but it was very clear there was nothing else on him. Hello. I stammered. I should have screamed. I should have grabbed something heavy. But my brain was still buffering. John turned, beaming from ear to ear. Honey, you're awake. His voice was weirdly cheerful. I was just about to wake you, sleepyhead. Wouldn't want you missing today. His smile never faltered, not even when he shouted. My stomach twisted. It's 2 in the morning, John. What are you doing here? How do you know where I live? He laughed. Loud, exaggerated, like I'd just told the funniest joke in the world. Ha! 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 Honey, you're killing me. What am I doing here? This is my house. Where else would I be? Want some juice? I glanced at the counter. A glass of something orange sat waiting. I don't keep juice in my house. Okay. Funny joke. John, please leave or I'll... Slam. He brought my skillet down onto the counter, so hard the tile cracked. I work so hard for this family, he hissed. Here I am, making you breakfast on our 35th wedding anniversary, and you can't even sit down and drink your juice. His face was burning red, but his smile never wavered. I cannot believe you made me raise my voice like that. His tone softened immediately like he'd just scolded a child. Especially in front of Tiffany. Tiffany? Who the hell is Tiffany? I snapped. Another laugh. Ha! Ha! Honey, you're a riot. He reached down behind the island and pulled up a woman. She was beautiful, looked about my age. She was also very much not conscious. Now, Tiffany, John cooed, hoisting her onto the kitchen island like a rag doll. She let out a soft groan. Surely Mommy is kidding. She knows today is a special day. I froze. John pulled a knife from the counter and pressed it against Tiffany's neck. Mommy knows today is special, he whispered, and trying to leave the house today will make Daddy very unhappy. His grin was locked in place. Now, Mommy, drink your juice. I had 2 priorities. 1, make sure this woman didn't die in my kitchen. 2, do not drink the fucking juice. The bacon was burning. The air smelled thick with it. I took slow steps forward, scanning for anything I could use. John was completely naked under the apron, which was deeply unfortunate. He had at least 1 knife. Tiffany was bound at the wrists and ankles, barely responsive. I had the advantage of knowing my own damn house. And I was not drinking that juice. My hands were shaking, so when I reached for the glass, I dropped it. It shattered on the floor. John froze. His head turned slowly, eyes burning, and a smile still stretched across his face. Sweetie, I cooed, forcing myself to sound playful. Can you stop cooking bacon? You know I don't like my food overcooked. His expression softened instantly. He turned to the charred strips in the pan. Duh! He smacked his forehead, laughing. Of course, honey. Ha! Ha! Let me pour you a new drink. As he moved toward the fridge, I edged toward the island. My stomach churned when I saw it. Yep. Fully erect under the apron. I swallowed bile. I'll grab the broom for the glass. John's entire body snapped toward me. You'll sit the fuck down and do what you're told. Tiffany whimpered. You hear that, honey? John cooed. Tiffany doesn't like when Mommy tries to leave Daddy. He pressed the knife back to her throat. And we don't want her to cry, do we? I sat down. No, sweetie. We don't want that. John relaxed and turned back to the oven. I tried again. You know, I could always go to... Go! John screamed. He slammed a fresh glass against the wall. Why do you women always have to go? His breathing was ragged. I'm trying to make a beautiful Christmas dinner, and everyone always wants to leave. He grabbed a shard of broken glass from the floor and threw it at me. I flinched as it skittered across the island. Honey, his voice was eerily calm again. It's a mess in here. He gestured to the broken shards. Pick up the glass. With your fingers. While you still have them. I froze. Now! I jumped. My hands shook as I started picking up the glass, tears slipping down my cheeks. Not from pain. From helplessness. By the time I was done, John was standing over me. And I was done playing along. Wow, sweetie. You really are such a big, strong man. You do such a great job providing for me and... Fuck. I forgot her name. Tiffany, he screamed. How do you forget your own daughter's name? All of you bitches are so self-centered. Here I am, a nice guy who works hard, and I get nothing. He was now groping Tiffany, with one hand while lightly scraping the knife along her back. I was glad she was barely conscious for this. You have me. I screamed again, trying to play along. I did not want anyone to die in my kitchen. You have me in this beautiful house that you built. He stopped with the knife and took his hand off her. He never stopped smiling. It's time for my present, he hissed. For our anniversary? I asked. No, it's my birthday, John shouted. He went into a brief rage and sliced Tiffany's cheek. She started to stir. I can't believe how awful of a wife you are. Do you know how many other women have died because they weren't special like you? So many. His face was blood red, but the smile never left. But you're just like all the others. And I need to teach you a lesson. I need to give you my present. He grabbed Tiffany by the hair and dragged her. He grabbed my hair and did the same. He opened the door to my pantry and slammed it shut. Then he dragged us into the living room, but a car drove by, illuminating the room for a moment. "No, not in here," he muttered. "Where can a man do some thinking around here?" he shouted. He started to rub his still hard dick on Tiffany's face through my apron. "The basement, sweetie, at the end of the hall." I stammered. "I know where my own goddamn basement is, you slut," he shouted back. He dragged me and Tiffany into the basement. He struggled with the heavy door but managed to yank it open. I knew I was running out of time. If something didn't happen soon, I was dead. He kept muttering to himself about how underappreciated he was. "After decades of hard work trying to build a family, this is how you treat me." I had one last move to play. "Sweetie, we were just kidding. Tiffany and I didn't forget about your birthday. Your present is in your man cave." I indicated the door in the basement. He stopped holding the knife to Tiffany, who was starting to come around. "It is." He was puzzled, but then he corrected himself. "Of course it is." He dragged us over to the door. "And this present better be everything I want." He caressed himself and licked the knife. "You'll see. I don't want to ruin the surprise," I spat out. Let's go. As a family." He dragged us toward the door. "I want to always remember this perfect moment." He stopped talking when he opened the door, and the light automatically turned on. "What the fuck?" He let go of Tiffany and me and started to dry heave. The cold air of my walk-in freezer wafted over us along with the smell. I took the opportunity to lunge, mouth open, and took a bite out of his throat. I gulped it down, and he looked at me in shock. I grabbed what little hair he had left and yanked him back like a Pez dispenser. I took 2 more big bites out of his neck and let him fall to my floor. Like I said, I don't like my food overcooked. John clearly was not expecting to see the bodies of my previous dates. There were a few in there. Most had been eaten down to the bone, but I recognized Billy by his broken arm. As John convulsed, gurgling blood, I took another bite out of his neck that I'm an emotional eater. I now had 2 problems. The first was that my freezer was getting full from these dates, and I hate to see food wasted. First world problems, I know. The second was Tiffany. While the poor girl should not have been dragged into this, she not only saw my pantry full of dead men, but also saw me eat a guy. As a feminist, I've never eaten a woman before, so I didn't know what to do. Tiffany, who was now fully back with us, started to talk. "Okay," she muttered. "Now I understand why you didn't call the cops." I chuckled in acknowledgement. "I just want to go home," Tiffany said as she undid her bindings. "I didn't see anything, I don't know you, I don't know where I am, and I just want to leave. My name isn't Tiffany, you don't know me. We are strangers. I just worked with that guy. He used to leer at me every day. We had a company happy hour, and that dickless shit drugged me. He threw me in a trunk and called me Tiffany. I don't care what you do with him." She started to stand up. "Just let me leave. I will never come back. Swallow him whole if you can. No one will miss him." I remained silent, contemplating the ifs. She started to back away and then turned to run. She was still a little drugged, or she might have been faster. She made it to the stairs before I got her. I took her down swiftly and aggressively. I immediately bit her ankle tendon to keep her from running. Then I dug into her midsection teeth first. I was so stuffed when she finally stopped squirming that I had to undo the drawstring on my PJs. I didn't want her to die in my kitchen. I didn't mind if she died in my basement. She knew John. Even if she didn't tell anyone right away, there was too much of a connection. And while he was eaten, is a tough story to sell to law enforcement. If he got reported missing, and they reached out to people in the office. And if someone saw John and Tiffany leave but only one came back, it could be enough to crack her. I would have to move, and how many houses have a storage freezer in their soundproof basement? In this economy, it would be a whole thing. Eating Tiffany just made things easier. Sorry, Tiffany, but you had to be dessert. I woke up the next morning in a haze. I was in a food coma and bloated as hell. Thankfully it was a Saturday, so I had the whole weekend to meal prep. While cooking, John the First rummaged through his wallet. I found a business card indicating that he worked in an office park across town. I drove his shitty car there, walked a few blocks, and then ordered a cab home. I'm sure John and Tiffany will be reported, but there's nothing to connect them back to me, just like my other dates. I then spent the rest of the weekend cleaning and eating. John might have been the worst, but he tasted amazing. Even though I like to spread out my dates, every time I thought of what John did to me, I would eat more of him, even if I was already stuffed. Like I said, too many one-night stands can really weigh you down. Tomorrow, I'm definitely going to work out. I also updated my online dating profile. I am now fully open to meeting up with women. Tiffany was also delicious, and the way I figure it, as a feminist, I'm an equal opportunity eater, and couples, for cheat days. Not Tinder, another. No photo, but she seemed cool on the phone. Made plans and gave her my address. When she buzzed the door, I let her in and opened my door waiting for her to walk the stairs. I heard 1 step, 2 steps, then heavy gasping for air. She was at least 300 pounds. I told myself, fuck it. She was here, I paid for tickets, so I was going to make this date work. We went to dinner. I lied and said I ate before so she didn't feel bad about inhaling 3 or 4 times what I could. She didn't speak much, but seemed really into me. We finished dinner, went back to my place and changed, then went to a show. We both got plastered. Came back to my place, drank some more, and then she left. A few minutes later, she called with some excuse about leaving her phone charger at my place. Came back, got more drunk. Too wasted to drive, she stayed over. Best head of my entire life. Seriously, I'm now into heavier set women. From an old post of mine and a different dating app, but here goes. I went out on a date with this woman. We went to a restaurant to have dinner. She seemed a little spacey, a low talker, kind of pretty, but a little disconnected with reality. We have a nice conversation I barely can hear. By the end of the date, usually people do a hug or say, "We should do this again sometime." She walked away, then walked back as if she remembered that's generally common human courtesy, to do some kind of goodbye. Kind of weird, I should have ended it there. So I go out with her again. We go to see the movie Annihilation about the scientists who explore an alien landing site. Part way through the movie, she starts freaking out and covering her eyes. This movie isn't even that scary. Afterwards, we go to the movie theater bar, where she needs to take time processing all the visuals she just saw. She's still kind of freaking out, but we get to talking. She shows me a reservation she made for the weekend. I look at it. It's not the name she used on her dating profile. And come to think of it, she never mentioned anything of that before, and it was a bit weird. I probably should have ended it there. So I go out with her again. We make plans. I'm going to pick her up at her place, and we're going to get Thai food. I get there, she texts me. I'm just finishing up my coffee. Come on in. She lives on some off-street with no road, one of those alleyway streets with only walking access. She lets me in at the gate. Looking at the apartment in front, which is completely empty, wood floors, figure this is a nice place. I knock on the door. She opens, and her giant dog that's like 100 pounds walks over to greet us. Now the dog does nothing wrong, just walks over. She looks at the dog, snaps her fingers, and stares at it. She has this dog under her control. On a dime. Oh, good boy. Now normally dog owners do shit like that to assert dominance, but this seemed a little more controlling than usual. We tour her place. And by the way, she's not finishing her coffee. She just poured it, and I'm itching to get food. Would you like some coffee? No, I want to get Thai food. Anyway, her place is nice. Furnished, sweet kitchen with pots, pans, full knife set and utensils. She's living pretty sweet. She's a psychiatrist who does at-home consultations, so I see pill bottles all over the table. We sit down, and she's CEI-upping this coffee. Maybe 15 to 20 minutes later, her roommate comes from downstairs, who also shares the same first name as me. He's kind of a large gamer dude. He goes to the kitchen, goes back upstairs, and comes down with a black roll. Only 2 people carry these, chefs and assassins. I know what it is immediately, and I start to freak out. It's a set of knives. Remember, the kitchen already had a sweet knife set. I don't know what the fuck is going on. But maybe he's a chef. Nope. He rolls it out and starts sharpening it on a metal stick, looking me in the eye. I'm thinking a chef would use a whetstone if they really gave a shit about their knives. I look to her. She's cool as a cucumber, as if nothing weird is happening. He goes to the kitchen to cut his vegetables. I see him cut onion from the bottom, and I'm like, that guy has no clue what he's doing. I gotta get out of here. My hand is on the doorknob at this point. She stands up, goes to the kitchen, and pours herself another cup of coffee and sits down. And she asks, "You sure you don't want a cup?" I look at those meds on the table and think, I don't know what the fuck you're gonna put in that drink, lady. You and your serial killer roommate. And I'm practically shitting my pants for another 20 minutes. We finally go to the Thai restaurant, where 3 seats down from me was a girl I went out with a few months ago, who I was into, but who also totally ghosted me. Blue hair this time around, and she seemed pretty bored on her date. Anyway, she tells me about her divorce, her being new to town, her living situation, how her roommate was a recovering meth addict she met who she let live in her place while he figured his life out. A lot of the weirdness, she explained, was due to her having synesthesia and ADD, hence getting freaked out by all the colorful images at the movie. And things kind of mellow out, but I can't seem to shake how weird this situation was before. She starts to seem a little more human, but I'm not sure I want to do this, even for the story. I should have ended it there. So I go out with her again. I pick her up, we go to the movie theater. It's one that doesn't let us in if we're 5 minutes late. We go to the bar, she's drinking, I'm like, let's hurry up or they won't let us into the movie. She takes her time. We're 5 minutes late, so we have to wait for the next showing. And at this point, I'm so emotionally guarded, and we're finding that we're not that into each other. We see the movie and grab a bite afterwards, where clearly she also discovers this isn't going anywhere. So she says to me, so I do this for a living. Oh, I know what's coming. She's going to psychologically analyze me. And she asks all these personal questions. And she gets to the core of me in like a minute, and says some things that just hit home and break me to my core. She's good, and I'm internally just destroyed and a complete mess. She's cool as a cucumber. We go outside, she's trying to get an emotional rise out of me, considering I was very emotionally guarded around her before due to the whole fear of death thing. And it's working. We go back to her place, and I'm a mess. Nothing physical has happened at this point, and I'm debating whether I should try and make a move or see if she wants to do anything. But also I know it's over, and I watch her with her dog, and she's got full dominance over her dog. And I realize I'm exactly like that dog, and here I am, broken emotionally, under her spell, weak, terrified, and insecure. And I look at the chair behind me, and on it are 2 knives laid out perfectly, on a living room chair. I get the fuck out of there immediately. I walk past their empty apartment up front and think, that's not an empty apartment for rent. That's the staging ground. The whole walk back, I'm thinking how no one will easily find me on this offshoot road. I can't even get to the road fast enough if I needed to. And I was terrified. I was not doing this shit anymore for the story. Later, a friend explained that, more than likely she was just weird and her roommate was trying to scare me off. If she started to get close to me, and I started putting any disparaging thoughts about her roomie into her head, he might lose that meal ticket, which made the most sense. But man, that one might top them for me. Well, I have a lot of stories. The one where girl showed me her mace and a knife before coming into my apartment. The one with a girl that turned out to be on the spectrum and repeated everything I said. Another one with the girl who was so socially dysfunctional, she aggressively interrogated me on the first day to the point where I had to say, either take your intensity from a 10 down to 5, or I'm walking out of here. But I'd say the best one was with Instaho Gina. Gina was a big booty B**********. One of these Instagram girls who just posts non-stop photos of themselves in bikinis and heels with their ass in the camera. So when she asked to meet up, I said hell yes. Drove all the way out to K-Town in Los Angeles to meet her, which normally I wouldn't do for a first date for a girl. But I felt like an adventure, and I definitely got one. There was a cool bar that I knew about, so I told her to meet me there. She walks in wearing a see-through gold mesh mini-skirt dress and heels, looking sexy as hell, but her face looked older than in her photos. Still looked good enough to get it going, if you know what I'm talking about. She walked in and said, "This is the place you want to meet me at. This place sucks. Let's go." Now I had just ordered my mezcal, so I was annoyed, but I took it down in one shot and left with her to go to another hip bar/lounge. We go in, it's popping, I buy us a drink, we sit down and we start talking, and no joke, in less than 10 minutes she says, "Why don't we just go to my place, it's kind of loud in here." I'm thinking, okay, this girl's crazy, but whatever, let's see where this goes. Her place is close to there, so we head over there and go to her apartment. For the most part the apartment looked pretty normal, although there was a half-empty bottle of vodka on her makeup desk in her bedroom. We smoked some weed, and immediately she jumped into her bed to hang out and listen to music. So we are about 20 minutes into a first date, and we are in her bed together. We're high, a little buzzed, and so I make a move, and all of a sudden she backs off saying, "Whoa, that's too fast." Too fast? All I did was try and kiss your neck, we are literally laying in your bed together, but okay. So I backed off and stopped trying after that, and just kind of laid there and talked to her, and she seemed to get very annoyed by the fact that I wasn't aggressively trying to get with her at that point. So she got up and said, "I want to change clothes," and proceeded to take off all of her clothes right in front of me. And when I say all of them, I mean every single article of clothing, and then pretend to struggle getting a new t-shirt on for about 10 minutes. Her big old floppy tits, and ass were just hanging out, and I'm not even giving her the time of day or attention. I knew in that moment that she was one of these girls that likes to push you away, but then likes you to try and aggressively get with her, and she likes to play that push and pull sort of tug-of-war game. I'm too old for that asterisk. I don't have any time for stupid games like that, so I wasn't giving her any attention. This infuriated her even more, and she then came back to the bed and started a fight with me out of nowhere. At that moment I was like, there's no pussy that's worth me dealing with stupid immature girls. And to be honest, I'm really hungry and I just want tacos, so I said to her, I'm out of here, I'm getting tacos. Put my shoes on and walked out of her apartment. She tried to stop me, but I didn't care, I wanted tacos. I left and I got delicious tacos. Great night. I've had quite a few. This is the only one that doesn't involve the police. First week having Tinder, years ago, and my sister and I were taking my mother out to dinner for Mother's Day in Orlando. We both went to school there, and she had driven up for the day. Girl messages me, asking if I wanted to grab drinks. Said no, out with my mom for Mother's Day. She says this is sweet, blah blah, maybe we can get drinks later. I don't answer. I'm enjoying my steak. She messages back later that night. Perfect timing. My mother is leaving the city. I look at her Tinder profile. Looks pretty good from the pics. Only I'm skeptical. Tinder is still new. She has her Instagram account at the bottom, just like every girl. I don't have Instagram at the time. Not great with social media. Hit up my fraternity buddy. Ask him to check out this girl's profile. Want to know if she's really this good looking or a troll. He says go for it. I pick her up. 10 out of 10 Barbie doll blonde from Alabama with a southern accent. She's in the Disney college program. We go drinking at downtown Disney, and the entire time, she's saying little phrases like typical lazy Mexicans or it smells. Is there a black person nearby? At this point, I'm not sure if she's trying to be funny or if this is her personality, but whatever, she's not for me. I'm cordial, drop her back off, and don't contact her again. For 2 weeks. Disney used to have something called College Night, where they would shut down House of Blues on Sunday and turn it into a nightclub for all their employees. I worked at Disney for a semester, and am going to the club with my co-worker Ricky, Hispanic, and my best bud from back home, Black Tyler, Black. We go into the club, and neither of them are as outgoing as I, so we lose each other rather fast. I see Barbie at one of bars. We drink, we dance, and she's much more charming this time than our first encounter. End of the night, she says come home with me. I say okay, and even tell her my buddy drove, Ricky, and he can drop us off at her place. We walk to the parking lot, and she sees Ricky and Black Tyler already in the car. Without a word, she instantly turns around and walks away. She calls me 30 seconds later. Can you find us another ride to my place? I don't associate with those types of people. Hung up, left her and me. Black Tyler and Ricky got Taco Bell. Oh boy, I have two. I matched with a guy I actually knew from middle and high school. Normally I would never go over to the house of a dude I'd met online right away, but I already knew this dude, so I figured it'd be fine. So I get there fully knowing what's going to happen, and I'm okay with that. We start drinking. He keeps giving me more shots and saying I needed to catch up with him. Whatever, that's cool. We get totally trashed and hook up. As I'm laying down in bed afterward, he says, you should probably go. What? I just drove over 30 minutes to get here, and you insisted on getting me drunk. I can't drive home at this point. We get in an argument, and he's saying he just likes to sleep alone. I don't remember the full argument as it was hazy, but I was full on ugly crying. So I offered to sleep on the couch. He refused to let me stay there. Oh, and this is in a rural area where I can't just call a cab or an Uber. So I say sarcastically, I guess I'll just sleep in my car then. Apparently, he thought that was a reasonable solution. So I stayed in my car in 40-degree rain for several hours until I was sober enough to drive home. The second one was worse. This one I actually met on Bumble. He never gave me his actual name, only used initials. I wasn't exactly smitten with him from the beginning of our conversations. He never used punctuation, said a few things that were sort of backhanded, but I brushed it off as a miscommunication, giving him the benefit of the doubt. We met up at a bar after work. I worked the evening shift, so it was fairly late. I sent him a photo showing my outfit right before I headed over, so he would recognize me. I made a joke and said, "So don't confuse me with everyone else wearing scrubs at the bar." Remember, it was right after work, I don't live nearby, and I wasn't going through all the effort of getting dolled up for a guy I was on the fence about. I still had my hair done nicely, and put on fresh makeup. His response? "It's okay, I don't look great right now either." Thanks. So in the 10 minutes it took me to get downtown, he sent me at least 3 texts asking where I was, if I'm still coming, etc. At a red light, I was able to text him back, looking for parking. Dude says, "Just park anywhere. It's free after 8 p.m. That wasn't the point, there were no empty spaces. After circling the block a few times, a spot opened up right across the street. So I go in and meet him. Right away this guy is putting his arm around me, trying to kiss me, totally invading my space. Completely unprompted, he assured me 3 times throughout the night that he was not a rapist. He also said I should relax and have fun because he'll take care of me. At one point I jokingly said, "I'll just sleep in my car if I can't drive home." I'm seeing a pattern here. He said that was a good idea. He'd make sure all my doors were locked so I was safe. This is on a very busy street downtown in a major US city. He kept ordering me drinks I didn't want. The rum and coke he walked over to the other bar across the room and brought back to me. I pretended to sip, then said it was too strong and I was going to ask the bartender to add some more coke. I walked to the other side of the room and had them switch the entire thing out for plain coke. A while later he asked if I liked sweet drinks. I just kinda said yeah, sometimes, something vague. Within about 3 minutes an AMF shows up in front of me. This was after I'd already told him I was done drinking for the night. This one at least came straight from the bartender, so I knew it wasn't tampered with. I took a few sips to be polite, then suggested we play some pool. While we were getting change, some guy accidentally knocks over my mostly full AMF. Guy apologizes profusely, offers to buy me a new one. I decline. My date had stepped away, so I was able to subtlety tell the guy, "I don't even know this dude. He keeps bringing me drinks I don't want." Guy offers to rub interference. I say yes please. At some point the bartender offers to comp the spilled drink, so I walk down to the end of the bar to order and tell her the same thing. This guy keeps giving me drinks I don't want. She then offers to make me fake drinks with no alcohol for the rest of the night. Perfect. This entire time I'm trying to think of an excuse to GTFO, but we start playing pool with the guy who spilled my drink and some girl. She was really cool, so I was chatting with her. My date told the guy he was from Kenya, even though 20 minutes earlier he told me he was from Somalia. Anyway, as I'm chatting with this girl, not paying attention, apparently my date misses his pool shot. He yells out, "Fuck this is bullshit," and slams down his pool cue on the table before storming off to sit in the corner alone for the rest of the evening. I stayed and talked to the girl for another 15 minutes or so before leaving without saying goodbye. The next day I get a Bumble message from him that said, "Last night was fun." While I was thinking of a way to tell him it was not, in fact, fun in the slightest, he unmatched me. Within 20 minutes. Met this one super tall, good-looking, supposedly successful white guy. I'm talking like handsome, 6'7" lead software engineer, charismatic and smart. Lunch went well, so I came over his house a few hours later to hang. Dude drank like 10 bottles of vitamin water in the span of a few hours. Noticed it smelled funny, and I asked to take a sip, which he seemed hesitant about, saying I wouldn't like it. Thing tasted like straight-up alcohol, to which he would deny multiple times. He said, "That's weird that you taste that." I realized that he was a major alcoholic. Went to wash my hands and found the freezer door open, and lo and behold, liters, and I mean liters of Grey Goose. Watched just how much he would drink it, and it was half a 1.75-liter bottle. That's half of the biggest size of vodka sold. That would get a horse fucked up. Earlier he was telling me how perfect he is, but turned out to be a narcissistic psychopath. Screamed vulgar words telling me to leave and everything. Lied straight to my face multiple times about something so vehemently obvious. He was a real motherfucker and super proud of it. Never been so convinced that looks deceive. When I thought things couldn't get crazier, his ex-girlfriend from China walks through the front door. I was super confused and overwhelmed. He drunkenly stumbles over her, telling her to leave, and forces her out the door. Turns out it's his girlfriend that just came back from staying in China. She and I didn't have enough time to figure out what the fuck was going on, but I eventually dug and found her on Facebook. We met up, and apparently he's this crazy guy with a lot of problems. We bonded over what a fucking nut job he was, and became really close friends still till today, smiley face. Met a girl, let's call her Sonia. We get dinner at a restaurant near her house, and then drink/hang out at her place after. During the night, Sonia somewhat casually mentions she has a guy that stalks her, and I'm just not sure what to make of this and pretty much don't give it another thought. After dinner, we go to Sonia's house. We drink, she plays the guitar and sings a song, and we stay up late. I end up drinking too much to drive home, so I stay on her couch, and we decide we'll get breakfast in the morning before I go to work. Around 6 a.m. we get ready to leave for breakfast. She mentions her stalker texted her saying he'd be there in 5 minutes, so it's good we're leaving now. This all seems odd/unbelievable to me. I never heard of a stalker announcing themselves, and especially doing so early. But whatever, let's go eat. I'm tired and hungover anyhow. Sonia's house is near campus, and my car is parallel parked on one of the many one-way streets. As I'm getting ready to pull my car out, this minivan pulls up next to me, trapping me in. He rolls down his window and yells, "But I said I loved you." And I'm just like, holy shit. So then after a few seconds, I don't remember any more of their dialogue, he pulls forward and heads down the street. Sonia is in my car and just apologizing, saying she used to date him and they weren't that serious, and is super embarrassed. So I try to give her the benefit of the doubt. He eventually turns left and I need to go the same way he went, but I decide I'm getting out of here and I turn right instead. As I do so, I look in my rear view mirror and this guy does a U-turn and is now following me. I can't believe this is actually happening, so then I decide to pull into a grocery parking lot and drive through it. Some reason I feel like this will deter him from following me, and I want to confirm he can't possibly be following me. It doesn't work. He follows my exact route. I pull out of the grocery parking lot and eventually approach a red light. He pulls up next to my passenger side, yelling at her to roll her window down, and she refuses to. I decide I'll do a super aggressive illegal U-turn at this red light to get away. He does the same maneuver and continues to follow me. He then starts to rev his engine and accelerate as if he's going to run into my car, and slams his brakes right before doing so. I wouldn't have guessed it out of context, but in this situation this is a pretty intimidating move. He does this move repeatedly as we speed through side streets approaching downtown Columbus. At this point I ask Sonia if he's dangerous or could have a weapon. Sonia isn't sure. Sonia calls the police to tell them of our situation. They tell us to continue driving downtown as the police station is pretty close to us. I thought I could evade him or get cars in between us, but it was impossible with such little traffic during the early morning. We continue to the police station, and as we pull in he drives past us. We wait a few minutes, and we decide to then continue on to breakfast. Sonia pays for breakfast, but I can't eat much of anything as my heart is still racing. After breakfast, she still needed a ride home. I really dreaded the idea of going near her house again, but at this point the police were also on their way to her house. I reluctantly drop her off and head to work, now fully awake. It didn't work out between me and Sonia. The first guy I met on Tinder wanted to grab a drink at a bar in LA. I parked my car, and while I was walking to the bar, I get a call from the dude. He tells me 1 minute has passed from the time we had scheduled to meet, and that I was late, so he left. I was shocked, and just immediately turned around pissed. He was like, "Just kidding, I see you." I turn around and see the bar about 20 feet ahead of me. He's standing outside waving at me in a tie-dye tank top, red basketball shorts, a Bubba Gump trucker hat, and bright red/blue Jordans. I wanted to turn around and go home at that point, but he already saw me. He said I was too dressed up, asked me if his attire was appropriate for our date, and I just had no words, had to be a joke. Also, we're at a nice wine bar in Beverly Hills. We sit down and he asks me what I want to drink, and I said anything but rose. So then the waitress comes and he orders me a rose. I was again shocked, but maybe he misheard me and thought I said any rose. I let it go and didn't bring it up. He proceeds to tell me that he's a criminal defense attorney. After about 15 minutes, he asks if it's okay if his friend comes by for a quick section. I just said it didn't matter, as I was planning on leaving soon. He gets the check and goes, "Let's head next door to Wolfgang Puck because he goes there often and his friend is coming there." So, we go there, and then he proceeds to tell me that his friend is actually one of his clients. He's a criminal defense attorney. So I just asked, "Is he guilty?" And he goes, "Oh hell yeah." So now I'm nervous, and then in like 5 minutes his friend arrives with a girl. We do quick intros, and the guys go outside to smoke a cigarette. The girl and I start talking, and she proceeds to ask me if it's possible to get an STD, because she had sex with that guy in a car before they came here, and after they finished he proceeded to tell her he had herpes. I told her if they didn't use a condom, there's a good chance she could get it. She was shocked as they didn't use a condom, and then told me she was on birth control, and was wondering if that would prevent herpes. I told her no, it'll prevent having a baby, but not herpes, and told her the guy was a piece of shit. The guys return, and now the two guys start to harass a couple next to us. Mind you, we're in Beverly Hills, so it's not uncommon to see an older man with a beautiful young woman. The couple was an older man with a very beautiful, younger blonde woman. The friend proceeded to ask us in a very loud manner, "How much do you think he paid for her?" While the guy I was supposed to be on a date with just kept laughing and laughing. I was so mortified and told them to be quiet. I guess that triggered the friend, so he started heading towards them to ask them the question directly to their face. I needed to get out of there. The bartender came towards him and told the guy, "Hey, they're having a nice time, stop being an asshole." After that I got up and left immediately. As I was walking out, the guy I was on a date with mumbled, "That's what I figured, you'd just leave." I didn't even look back. As I walked to my car, I deleted my account. I realized that had all happened in the matter of an hour. So I had been chatting with a woman for a couple of days, and all seemed well. She was friendly, asked questions, cute pictures, etc. No red flags. I figured the next logical step would be to get together for a drink, and so I asked for her number, and we texted back and forth. We picked a date, and decided to head out for a drink. I met her at the restaurant, and she looked well put together. I offered her a compliment, she took it, thanked me, and we proceeded to sit down. Our waitress comes by and, being a gentleman, I differ to my date to order first. 2 shots of tequila and a Budweiser, please. Admittedly, I was a little taken aback, but I did well not to show it on my face. Crappy beer choice and 2 shots. Perhaps she was nervous and ordered us each a shot of tequila to loosen up. I hadn't planned on drinking much that evening, but I'm a fun guy, so I figured sure, why not? I order a beer. The waitress comes back and puts a shot and a beer in front of each of us, and I thank her. My date reaches over and grabs my shot and sets it in front of her. She then proceeds to slam both shots and pound half of her beer. I'm in disbelief. This little 120 pounds girl is drinking like a parched camel. The conversation proceeds, and in all honesty, it was enjoyable. About 20 minutes roll by, and the server checks in with us to see if we need a refill. My date then orders the exact same thing again. And again, when the items arrive at the table 5 minutes. Later she does the same thing. 1 shot gone. 2 shots gone. And don't forget to follow it up with half a pint of beer. There is no way I can hide the shock on my face at this point, but I don't want her to feel judged, so I excuse myself to the bathroom. I come back several minutes later and find her at the bar, trying to get more drinks. The bartender is denying her because our collective bill is showing 0 food at the table and 8 drinks for 2 people. Keep in mind I have only had 2 of said drinks. This is getting belligerent. We stay at the restaurant for another half an hour and the drinks begin to hit her. Not in a supremely obvious way, but I can tell she's feeling it a bit. She excuses herself to the bathroom, and I legitimately did consider leaving. But the idea of some young lady all drunk in public and vulnerable didn't sit well with me. She comes back a full 15 minutes later looking right out of her head. Real bad. Running nose, doe-eyed, slurring her words, and getting very handsy. I immediately suspect she is under the influence of something more than alcohol. At this point she leans over to me and tries to whisper, but fails. So are you gun take him home and enfuck me or what? I've never had a one-night stand, and I'm damn sure not about to start with this garbage fire of a woman. I politely decline and she yells in a semi-crowded restaurant. What are you a faggot? A fine sexy-ass woman tells you to take her home, and you say no? Gaw wow, the men in this city. Everyone is staring at us. I've had enough at this point and immediately go and pay our bill. I then practically carry her outside. Everyone is looking at me like I'm some kind of predator. Delightful. I ask where she lives. I live in my apartment, you jackass. You gun come home WTH me? Great. At least she's being helpful, right? So as she sits half passed out on the curb, I open her bag to find a license with an address on it. In her bag is a cell phone, 2 hair ties, 2 tampons, and a bag of what I would later learn is heroin. Fucking heroin. No wallet, no ID. So I wrestle her thumb to unlock her phone and call the last friend she had texted. I inform her of the situation and she says, "Oh yeah, don't worry, she just does that sometimes. I'll be over in 10 minutes to get her." The friend shows up, We pile my date into her car, and she peels out. And I'm left standing there, in a haze of disbelief to ponder if online dating really is for me. I got a good one. It's a little long but so worth it. Buckle up, kids. Match with a younger girl. Looked like your average e-girl that's heavily into astrology. You know what I'm talking about. We casually chat for a couple days, granted the conversation is very spaced out between responses, but nothing out of the ordinary. She ends up asking me to come over in the coming days, alluding to sex, which I agree. Next day she gives me the, "Oh, I'm taking a hot shower." I don't really play into it and reply with something deadpan along the lines of cool, being clean is dope. All of a sudden my phone is filled with unsolicited nudes of this girl. I'm taken a bit aback, but she was attractive and we have a date set, so I'm all for it. The night before we're supposed to meet, I send a quick, "Hey, we still on for tomorrow?" She ghosts me. I was a bit disappointed, but meh, that's the game we play. The day we were supposed to meet up goes by, still no response. The next day, however, I get a wall of text on my phone from her number while at work. It essentially says, "I don't know why my 16-year-old daughter is sending an adult man nudes and planning to meet up, but I will hunt you down and make you answer for your crimes. You better watch your back, mister," my first name. "You'll be hearing from the police." I am immediately in DEFCON 5. I go into my phone to delete the pictures, but in my rushed state I deleted the entire message thread with her, losing the long wall of text. I send out this dumb, "I didn't know she said she was 21 in the app, blah blah blah. I clearly never asked for the nudes." I was so full of adrenaline, it was just a blur. Not but like 30 seconds later I get a call from an out-of-state number coming through. I pick it up, and it's a man that keeps calling me Mr., my first name, claiming to be a private investigator that has been hired by the girl's family to find me and have charges filed to arrest me for eliciting and possession of child pornography. Now I thought I was stressed out before, but I am now at 15:10:3 spuppe for me trying to figure out what the fuck is going on and how I got into this mess. I'm just trying to explain I'm an innocent party here. I had no idea and I didn't ask for anything. Everything was her suggestion. They start going into the fact that I didn't try to verify her age and how the app uses age verification, obviously questions I had no answer for. The guy proceeds to tell me they have paperwork filled out and ready to be filled to charge me. At this point we had been talking for about 10 minutes, and I start to come off the adrenaline and start thinking rationally. I'm starting to think this seems very odd. Why the fuck are they calling me? Why don't they just file the paperwork and have me arrested? What's the point? Why the fuck does this guy keep calling me Mr., my first name, and not my last name? The PI follows up with, "Well, I've got her dad right here, and he would like a word with you, so here's your chance to sort this out." I'm immediately confused as to what the man would want to say to me. So again I take a defensive stance and start asking why they'd come after me if I'm clearly blindsided by this, and have no interest in underage girls, and would have immediately ceased contact had I learned if she was even under 21. He gives me the same, "You should have been more diligent," and then comments how I could have thought she was of age when her nudes show how clearly underdeveloped she was, and then he commented specifically on her breasts. Gross. This was where a switch flipped in me. No caring father in this situation would act like this and comment on his daughter's body in that manner. No way. So I start prodding back while still playing the part. I ask the PI for his credentials. Turns out he's word of mouth only and doesn't have an office. Sketchy. I ask for his work experience because he seems pretty good. Again, won't tell me. I ask for his name so I can check if he's legit. Nope. He's asking the questions, not me. I'm the one in trouble, not him. So I'm sitting here wondering what the point of this phone call is. Why call me if nothing I do can help my chances, as they keep telling me nothing I say will make them not file the charges. Now they're both on speakerphone, and we've been talking for about 20 minutes at this point. I'm pretty much point blank asking them why they're calling me. What's the out? How do we smooth this over? Because they're threatening to have the police come to my work right now and arrest me. I actually work at a luxury car dealership down the street from a police station, so I'm still sweating a bit calling their bluff. Then they finally drop the bomb. Well, when her parents caught her last night, they got into a huge fight, and she broke the front door before she was sent to a mental hospital. Her dad says if you pay to replace the door, he'll smooth things over with her mom, and they won't file charges. We have the receipt for the door right now. It's about $700 installed. Now I'm not very good at electronics, but have you ever heard of the Vanimo Cash app? Inside I'm like, there it is, you motherfuckers, this is a fucking scam, I can't believe it. The girl was never real, this whole fucking thing is made up. I tell them yeah, I've heard of it, but don't have it. He tells me to make sure to stay on the line, and he'll tell me how to download it to send them money. I start putting the pieces together. They don't have my last name, as they've only ever called me Mr., my first name, and they never actually said where I worked. I realize the only things they know about me is info they got from the app, my first name, and my phone number. I then tell him that this feels fishy, and I'm not so sure about this. He says he's not the one in hot water. He'll just hang up and file the charges if that's what I want. I tell him that if he has everything ready and in front of him, then what's my last name? If you're ready to file charges, then you have my info. Where do I work? What's my last name? He says he doesn't need to go through the paperwork and tell me. I tell him to give me any info about myself other than my first name and phone number, and I'll believe them and pay the full amount. I can tell he's getting frustrated, and I repeat myself. What's my last name, Mr. Private Investigator? Thought you tracked me down? He told me he wasn't there to play games. I called him some choice words and asked how many people they've scammed with this plan. I hung up, and it's been 2 weeks. No more contact or anything came of it. Even though I figured it out before shit hit the fan, it was quite the traumatic experience. Be careful out there, guys. This scam was pretty flushed out. So I had been up talking to a girl all night on Tinder. The conversation was fun. A little bit of some innuendos thrown in, playful stuff, till we got to talking about me going to her place in the morning. It was 5 a.m. Pretty much with tacit consent that we were going to have sex and all of that. Well, my people, let me tell you. I show up, knock on the door, and she answers it. As I walk in, I haven't even fully seen her because the door is shielding her. As the door creaks closed, I do not see the woman from the pictures I was browsing through all night. Instead, I saw a mastodon. She was easily 180 pounds over what I thought she was from the pictures. My brain couldn't even process how different she looked. I immediately felt like I needed to leave, but I hesitated specifically because I felt like if she was going to put up a fight on my way out, I wasn't sure if I could take her in hand-to-hand combat. I'm 6 feet 2 inches and 190 with a background in fucking shit up, but I've done the danger dance with meatied-out Samoan ladies before back in YNIA, and I know how much damage a big bitch on a mission can do. I decided to play it cool, since predators chase you when you run. So we went to her room, kept up with the pleasantries, and we put on some Family Guy. As we're watching TV, she puts her hand on my arm and starts stroking me with something. It's not her finger. It's sharp as hell, and my heart gets caught in my throat for a moment. I look down to see that she has damn near 3-inch, pointed nails on all of her fingers. Now I knew she would maul me like a bear on cocaine if I didn't play it safe. If she got a hold of my dick, it was going to look like confetti come time to bail. She was staring at me, looking deep into my eyes, her barreled chest struggling to take a congested breath, her ninja star fingers tracing chalk lines on my arm, and her weight shifting the couch noticeably to my right like I was caught in her personal gravity well. I got up and said that I had to go to the restroom and immediately started texting my brother, my boss, telling him to call me and scream at me for being late to work even though I had the day off. It took almost 10 minutes of texting him till he finally understood why I needed his help. So he calls me, finally, and starts dropping bombs on me and threatening to fire me, which was all heard over speakerphone by the literal train that was drooling across the room over the smell of my sweet monkey meat, like she was ready for the buffet edition of a pub crawl. I told her I was sorry and had to leave immediately. She let me out, and as she closed the door, I felt the outside world like I was being born again. Sweet freedom. I was shaking with joy. I went to my brother's work and told him the story. To this day, he reminds me of it and laughs. A week later, one of my best friends is scrolling Tinder, and I see he's talking to the same girl. Yo, that's the girl I told you about. And he couldn't even believe it. She had her picture angles down so well that she must have been used to the situation. Note, I've got no problem with big girls. But when you blatantly make an effort to trick people into thinking you look completely different, it's just rude. I would not do that to someone. It just creates so much awkwardness, and it makes people lose trust. I was courteous the whole time, but kinda wanted to put on a Steve Irwin accent and tell her she looked like a mayonnaise neutron star. I matched with someone, Holly will say, and sent them a pretty benign hello message to which they immediately suggested we meet up. This seemed kind of weird, but I decided a date was a date and headed out to the Red Mango we agreed to meet at. When I got there, Holly was already sitting at a table eating a bowl of frozen yogurt, which was kind of weird, but whatever. I got myself something and joined her at the table. We started talking about very basic stuff, nothing too personal. As we were talking, I realized that the people behind the counter were eyeing us pretty intently. I asked Holly if she noticed, and she said, "Yeah, they're trying to make me uncomfortable since they're my co-workers," which was kind of weird, but maybe meeting here was just easier for her. Eventually, the topic of school came up. At the time, I was a junior in college, so I told Holly about what I was studying, and that I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do after I graduated. She laughed, saying she knew exactly what I meant. She went on to say that throughout her time in high school, she regularly wore men's clothing and, as a result, had an interest in designing men's clothes. Of course, I asked if she was studying fashion, and she responded by telling me that she hated high school so much that she decided not to go to college, which was kind of weird considering her passion for making clothes, but maybe she had other connections. She continued by saying she was a very creative person, and that she also writing a book before also casually mentioning how she was in the process of starting a photography company as well. I asked how those were going, and she said they were more theoretical than reality at that point, which was kind of weird, but I guess everybody needs to be able to work towards goals. I was about to start changing the subject, but she began explaining to me her backup plan if none of her career endeavors panned out, becoming a surgeon. Although she lacked any of the training for it, Holly gleefully told me that she could see herself going down that path because she was not afraid of blood and gore, which was kind of weird to tell me on the first date, but, well, I was running out of reasons to justify staying. Without prompting, Holly continued by telling me that she was certain she could handle the graphic nature of being a surgeon because she personally slaughtered a sheep that past summer. She did not spare me the details, going as far as mimicking the human-like shriek, her words, that the animal made when she killed it, which was kind of weird to think, but I was already this far and figured I should see if there was grand finale. There was. Holly started telling me that her family regularly slaughters goats and sheep as part of rituals for their strong shaman background. She hushed her voice as she leaned in and said that her religion had actually gifted her with psychic powers, manifested as voices in her head. In fact, she continued, the voices were so strong that they were telling her exactly what to write in the aforementioned book, bringing us full circle, which was kind of weird since that's not how any of that works. At this point, I looked at my phone, suggested it was getting late, and left. Overall, it was a kind of weird experience. Another, not me but my dad one, from a few years ago. I know this'll be buried, but whatever. My dad, late 70s, has been on POF for years. He has his profile set up to only accept messages from women 60 plus, a standard feature of theirs. One day he's contacted a profile claiming to be over 80, but with a suspiciously young-looking and heavily filtered headshot. She initiated a chat with him. I later acquired screenshots to prove this. He immediately asked her about the picture mismatch, and she told him, "Oh yeah, I'm actually 23, but my friend created this account for me with a wrong birth date, and it won't let me change it now." My dad told her he wasn't necessarily interested in seeing a 23-year-old, but would be willing to shoot the shit. During the conversation, she worked in that she was on hard times after having moved several states to escape an abusive ex, blah blah, and her car was currently out of commission, so she could really use a ride to the cell phone store to sort out something on her account. He told her though he lives over an hour away, he's occasionally in her neighborhood for a call, and would be happy to do so if when. About a week later, he got a call in that area, so he messaged her. The slippery sloping intensified from here. To preface, I'm most frustrated that he was so oblivious to the scam. She hopped in his car and told him he'd be taking her to the mall. Well, okay. Once there, she proceeded to hot-foot it into Victoria's Secret. Sure thing. She grabbed a cloth shopping bag and overflowed it with expensive items. Then she went to check out $500 of merch and realized that she'd forgotten her wallet at home, which had her cash in it. Somehow she conned my dad into opening a new Victoria's Charge account in his name. This apparently didn't raise any red flags to the clerks attending to this transaction, sigh, with promises of paying him back in cash once he dropped her back at home. They drove back to her house, and she headed inside saying she'd be right back with the money. After a half hour, he got out of his truck and knocked on her door, and she answered crossly saying, "What are you still doing here?" He went away, but a few days later he was back in the area and knocked on her door again. This time, he told her he would need the cash or the merchandise back, or he would be calling the cops. Right at this moment there were some neighbors arriving home right across the street, so she yelled at the top of her lungs for him to get his hands off her, pushed him backwards onto her steps, breaking a rib, yelling for them to call the cops, and disappearing inside her house. He waited the 15 or 20 minutes it took a cop car, accompanied by a paramedic unit, to respond, believing he'd be able to tell the cops what actually happened and clear things up. When she re-emerged from her house to greet the cops, somehow she now had small scratches on her neck, and she told the cops that this 200-pound man had thrown her to the ground and strangled her when she refused to give back gifts he'd bought her on a first date. Despite her claims of assault, the paramedics left the scene without so much as personally examining her, and the cops arrested my dad, already having decided that he was guilty, and on the way to the police station, apparently alerted every news outlet in the country. I found out a few days later when my sister-in-law, who lives halfway across the country from me, saw his mugshot on Yahoo News randomly under a headline along the lines of 7*year-old arrested for strangling 23-year-old after first date. I worked with him to acquire screenshots of the remnants of their conversation on POF after she'd deleted her account, as well as a Google cache of her profile that she'd attempted to delete, and provided them to a highly rated criminal defense lawyer in that jurisdiction. All of the evidence I've been able to piece together supports his version of events, more or less. Epilogue. The prosecution decided not to proceed with their case against him as the victim told them that she would not appear in court to testify against him unless they paid her. That's right. Also, about 6 months later we stumbled on a new POF profile with her same profile picture, a different username, and a different but similarly wrong age, as well as similar sugar daddy baiting profile language, claiming to be in another city about 50 miles away. I assume she moves up and down the East Coast squatting at the houses of acquaintances pulling the same scam on a long string of gullible older men, but didn't count on one of them actually calling her on her scam.